We are calling to order the regular meeting of the West Basin Engineering and Operations Committee and a special meeting of the Board of Directors. So, Mr. General Manager, do we have a quorum?
I'll read it through roll call. Director Harold Williams.
Here.
Chairman Desi Alvarez.
Here.
Director Don Deere.
Here.
Director Scott Houston. Director Gloria Gray. We have a quorum.
Okay. Do we have any public comments today?
Mr. Chairman, we do not have any requests for public comment that have been submitted electronically, though this meeting is being held both in person and virtually. If there's anybody that would like to make public comment that is attending virtually, if you could please indicate so by raising your virtual hand. Mr. Chairman, I do not see any requests for public comment.
And presentations, do we have any of those today?
Staff has no presentations today.
All right, so let's move on with the action calendar. First item up is the agreement for professional engineering services.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
If I can, I'd like to make a request to everyone here to speak up a little louder because this fan right here is giving you a lot of competition. So I have not been able to hear much. I know you haven't started.
But no, I've been talking. Can you hear me or do I need to speak
You need
louder?
to speak up, everybody. Thank you.
Okay,
I'm a little older than the other day, so.
right, so the first item we have on the action calendar is an agreement for professional engineering services on the solids handling improvement project. So, Mr. General Manager, would you like to introduce that item?
Yes, I'd be happy to do so. This begins on packet page 3 of your committee packet. As you mentioned, it is an award of agreement for professional engineering services on the solids handling improvement project. This is an item that's been through this committee on several occasions, and we hope to bring it back for further discussion today. For this presentation, we have John Vanier that will be handling the presentation.
Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez, members of the committee. Today I'll be presenting an action item recommending a contract award for professional engineering services on the solids handling system improvements project. 0059. As EJ mentioned, agenda item 5A begins on page 3 of your board packet. We'll be beginning today with attachment A, the presentation, which begins on packet page 9. Next slide, please. So as usual today, we'll begin with some background on the project. As you may remember, we presented several staff reports for this project over the last few months. So there, just included a one-page recap. Our solids handling system is vital for West Basin's recycling program. The solids handling system, we would not be able to produce recycled water. The largest component of the system is the final stage, comprised of 2 plated frame filter presses, or EFF. These presses compact all of the solid sludge produced at the Eversley Little Water Recycling Facility into cakes, which are then deposited onto trucks and hauled away for reuse. Both these presses and their associated systems were installed in 1995, and most of the major components are now in a poor or very poor condition. This poor condition has caused rapidly escalating maintenance, solids haulage, and chemical treatment costs. We conducted 3 studies into this issue, one in 2018, one in 2021, and the final one last year. These studies conducted condition assessments of our current system, assessed alternatives and solution to the escalating cost, and even undertook a small-scale trial of one of the suggested alternatives. After evaluating these studies and assessing the current costs of running a system in such poor condition, West Basin staff has recommended proceeding with option B, which is refurbishment of the plated frame filter presses, to the anticipated payback period of 4.7 years. Just state here as well, because we have seen the slide a few times, that the chart here and the payback calculation are being continually updated as the project progresses. As an example, the calculations in this presentation that you're going to see today take into account the new line procurement contract that was awarded by the board last month. So the return on investment remains at 4.7 years, despite that new line contract. And I just want to make sure that you're clear that we continually This is one of the rare projects where we can expect to realize immediate improvements across a number of areas once it's completed. As I've detailed a few times now, the O&M costs for this press system are escalating rapidly year on year. The chart to the right here shows the actual historic expenditure on the system and then forecasts the expenditure we anticipate for this fiscal year. As you can see, we expect significant increases this year in both haulage and chemical costs due to much more expensive contracts. Expect all of these costs to continue increasing as we move forward. Refurbishment project aims to significantly reduce every category on this chart except for the electrical costs there at the bottom, which are expected to remain. Our current estimates indicate that we can reduce our annual expenditure from an anticipated $6.1 million per year in 2024 to around $3.1 million per year. So that's a saving of $3 million per year. Or in other words, cutting our own costs on this system by approximately 50%. And it wouldn't just improve financial aspects. The solids handling system is such a critical element of our recycled water system that it has a major impact across our entire production. This has led to significant amounts of recirculating in the system at ECL. And these recirculating solids place considerable strain on our system. They wear out filters and membranes more quickly, and they foul systems more frequently. While our ops team undertakes a valiant effort to prevent this from affecting the recycled water we produce, we have had complaints of odor issues and water quality from both neighbours and customers. With refurbished presses, we will be able to extract these recirculating solids from the system over time, significantly reducing all of the issues you see here on the slide and making producing clean, high quality water much easier. Business staff and our contract operators have long considered this refurbishment as being one of the most critical projects we need to undertake as a district. So hopefully this slide helps explain why.
We move off this slide. Can you go a little bit more into the $3 million in savings you've identified? The haulage is $1 million, the downtime.
Yeah.
Can you give me a little background how you come up with those numbers?
Yes. So if you remember, it's a long time ago now, we're back in October of last year. We went through the proposed next steps. And so we assessed the current costs. So we're currently spending, or historic costs have been about 5.2 million per year on the solids handling system. With the new contracts, hauling and chemical, and increased maintenance on the systems as they continue to fail with increasing regularity, we anticipate that to rise to about 5.8 to 6.1 million. So the actual refurbishment, we anticipate reducing the cost by about $3 million per year, just under, so about $700,000 is in haulage costs, $350,000 minimum in line costs. We estimate the operator labor costs we can reduce by around $500,000. And then we have an approximate expenditure of $3.1 million that we anticipate in failed components over the next 15 years. That's spread out across the years. So the first three are actual O&M costs. And then we have anticipated failed components, approximate $100,000 per year in plates replacement costs. That's anticipated by our OEM, the original equipment manufacturer for the presses. And then we have estimated approximately $923,000 per year in associated downtime costs, which correlates roughly to 1 month of downtime.
Maybe we can just focus on one item, on the haulage. So that's a big item. You said, the numbers you just said, I think you just said 700,000.
Yeah.
Had $1 million in the presentation. But anyways, on that, the reason for that is because we have to haul more frequently now than we would.
Yes, so it's not only hauling more frequently, it's also we get charged for half loads. So if we haul out less than 17 tons in a truck, then we get charged an extra $1,100 per truck, which is mounted up over the time, especially when we have poor influent quality. The replacement of the cloths, it's reducing that already. So we're able to produce more dense cakes, which can then mean that we're hauling away more sludge with each truckload. So not only is it more trucks required to take out less sludge currently, but as we improve the system as we replace the cloths, improve the pumps, improve the presses so that we can get a higher pressure. We can get more dense cakes, up to 50% we're anticipating, which can then mean that we're hauling away more sludge with each truck. So we're having less trucks and we're paying less additional fees for them.
So it's basically the percentage of solids that we're handling.
With each press,
Recently, we just purchased new filter. Did that not increase?
it did, yes.
What's the change in the cost from just the replacement of those filters?
The filter cloths, we anticipate to save us between about $70,000 and $100,000 per month. So most of that haulage cost, most of the haulage costs we've got in here, and replace the filter cloths again is part of this project, by the refurbishment. The problem we've got is that just replacing the cloths wholesale, you experience diminishing returns year on year. Replacing the cloths now, we see a sharp drop in the haulage costs, so we will do moving forwards. But if we don't replace the other ancillary components, the pumps, the plates, the carriages, we will start to see the effect of those cloths wane over time, and even replacing those cloths, we might end up replacing them every 6 months. It was still have diminishing returns.
So right now, you just said that just replacing the filters saves us $70,000 a month.
We anticipated to. We only did it last month.
That's a significant amount. So how's that affect this number?
Well, that is included as part of this project savings. That's the first step of the refurbishment process. We brought that element earlier in the project, so that because we identified it as a quick win on the project, effectively to reduce the overhead costs as soon as possible.
So the money we've already spent saves us that 700,000. So moving forward for the rest of the project, we're really not going to see that over and over again. We still have to. I mean, if we just replace the filters, we're going to end up saving quite a bit of money. And from time to time, they're going to continue to deteriorate and need to be replaced. But that was, although it was not an insignificant amount of money, it was not a large sum of money in comparison.
Absolutely, but as I say, over time we will see diminishing returns. So, for example, part of the presses that we're planning to refurbish is a cloth washing system. So the cloth washer, which is intended to clean down the cloths, the filter cloths after each press, hasn't functioned for several years. Refurbishment, we're going to refurbish that and get it back up and running. Without that cloth washer, you're going to see those filters, cloths become fouled very quickly. We're looking at potentially replacing up to 50% of the cloths, potentially 75% of the cloths next year, and that will probably increase and increase and increase. We anticipate if we don't do the remaining refurbishment around the system, that saving that we're experiencing right now is going to diminish and diminish and diminish.
Do we know what those rates would be besides it just gets more accelerated?
No, I don't know. This is just
A lot of generalities and we're spending a lot of money.
yes.
So it'd be nice to have a little bit more specific numbers. But we don't have them right now.
No, this is just in conversations we've had with industry experts, the original equipment manufacturer, and so on. This other part.
That's something maybe we can work on and bring it back so that we can consider that.
Absolutely.
Question there, John, if you were to go and do additional research, are there additional experts that you could ask for? You mentioned discussing this with the manufacturer. I want to make sure that if we're going to go back and do additional research, we have a place to do that research or an additional.
So it would be sitting down with the experts we've already consulted with. They are the industry leading experts in this field. They've done this particular refurbishment several times, but also they are the manufacturers of the presses. They're people that operate these presses in the US and in Europe. And so we'd go back to them and sit down and try to work out those exact numbers. I don't know how long that process would take. I mean, this project is estimated to save approximately $250,000 per month. So any delay while doing that may not be
things in here are based off of the conversations you've already had with those experts.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. They're based off conversations we've already had, conversations where they state we expect to need to replace 5% of the cloths next year, 100% the following year, then it'll be 100% every 6 months. And that's what these estimates have been based off of, but I don't have the exact rate.
So is there any way to get more objective information? Seems like we're basing decisions to spend a lot of money on very subjective information from sure that they're in the best position to give us the information that we're asking for.
Absolutely, you can reach out to different people. I mean, the vendors who supply this equipment and service this equipment and maintain it tend to be. But yeah, absolutely.
Just to be clear on the request, it's the data related to how fast the cloth would, the rate at which the cloth would degenerate or degrade over time if we don't have these other ancillary equipment.
Yeah, because basically we're saying, we replace the filter cloth. You replace the filter cloth and your solid concentration goes up, right? So now you're saying, well, the rate of replacement of the filter cloth is going to continue to accelerate because of other issues that are happening. And so I'm not quite sure that I understand, but my question is, what are those other issues? What specifically and how do they specifically affect the filter cloth? I get the filter cloth component. And that's why I asked the question about, well, is it just the solid concentration, is the number, the amount of hauling trips you're gonna have, et cetera. So if we're looking at that, we got some benefits from replacing the filter cloth. What's the rate of that the filter cloths are going to deteriorate at more than they normally would? And do we have an objective number of that, or is it just a subjective number that, well, everything's going to just get worse over time? Which is a very generic statement to make. But I'm not hearing any objective substantiation of what those rates are and why that's happening and what maybe other things should be looked at. All I'm hearing is subjective industry experts tell us it's going to happen. Well, that's true.
Yeah, and I can provide some further information on other factors that you mentioned. The pumps, for example, we have 4 Able pumps there that provide the pressure. So they pressurize the system and they effectively squeeze the filtrate through the cloths. Those pumps are far beyond their useful life and pretty continually failing and are struggling to maintain adequate pressure to actually pump the filtrate through the cloths. So by replacing the cloths continually, if we don't address the pumps, then we risk downtime eventually, downtime of the presses, which has an associated cost of about $1,000 per month of downtime costs. But also, if the pumps can't reach the pressure, then it doesn't really matter how often you change the cloths, because you can't
But
pressurize the
right
system.
now, do the pumps reach the necessary pressure?
Not a lot of times they're not, and the maintenance team is spending a lot of times in replacing belts and making sure the pressure meets. As soon as the cloth were replaced, there were another pump incidents, like we weren't able to meet the pressure because with the cloth replaced, we were supposed to see at least 35 and above. When the pump was down, like we were down to in the teens to 20% again. So the pumps are very critical components as part of this project. And you were asking for objective analysis of how fast the rate of the cloth deteriorate. There's so many factors that a lot of issues that needs to be addressed as part of this project will play into this. So I'm sure we can try to ask the experts, but there are many things that play into it, unfortunately. So.
And on packet page 25, we have some images of other issues that occurred with the presses. On the right-hand side image there, you can see when a seal failed in the pump reservoir and the pump reservoir filled with sludge. It is just one of the foul feed pipes between the pump and the presses, where they're severely constricted. So you see plate misalignment there where carriages come off their rails. There's a number of issues that we experience with these presses. The costs will save us around $70,000 to $100,000 per month in haulage. So we get the $700,000 to around $1 million per year. That $1 million, by the way, unfortunately, $1 million is with the new contract. 700,000 for the old contract, so it is $1 million per year. That would save us from haulage, but there are still several other million, 2.1, we estimate $1 million of other costs in O&M costs per year that are being caused by other issues.
Also actually being discontinued. The oil pump manufacturer has already reached out to us numerous times that a lot of the parts are not being manufactured constantly. So when some of the parts are being needed to be replaced, there will be a lead time to replace those parts. So that's one of the other factors that is important for us to refurbish or replace these pumps to help us to continue the operation that we need. With the cloth replaced, we did see a significant improvement in our solids reduction. However, again, that's as much as how reliable those pumps can help us to produce the pressure and to give us the amount of solids to the press. So there are a number of significant components that needs to be addressed as part of this project.
I think I still would like to see a little bit more subjective analysis of those numbers or backing up those numbers. But let's move on.
So if you don't mind going back to packet page 12. So what does refurbishment actually entail? There are 4 main sections to this refurbishment, starting with the sludge conditioning tanks. The presses require 4 sludge conditioning tanks, which are located outside the dewatering building. These tanks are where the hydrated lime is added to the sludge that's taken from our thickness. In 2013, we replaced the 2 outer tanks, which were showing significant wear. In this project, we would continue that and replace the 2 inner tanks. These are original from 1995, and they were deemed to be in a very poor condition and beyond refurbishment in the 2018 condition assessment. Touched on already, but concerns the 4 feed pumps. These high-powered pumps are responsible for not only transferring the sludge from the conditioning tanks to the presses, but also providing the pressure needed to operate the presses. All 4 of these are original from 1995, are in a very poor state, as we've seen, with near constant component failures, shutdowns, inadequate pressure. And unfortunately, these 2 are beyond refurbishment. As Susanna mentioned, the manufacturer has reached out to us several times to say that they cannot replace components of these presses, they cannot be serviced, and so they're beyond refurbishment. I don't know the exact horsepower, do you know?
Not off the top of my head.
No, very not.
Dr. Farabos, what was your question?
How big are these pumps?
I was just measuring as well.
We'll look at that information. Get feedback.
So we plan to replace all 4 pumps with modern versions. They'll make a huge difference to the product. We also plan to replace all associated feed piping. We saw an image just then of the fouled feed piping. It's corroded, fouled at some point. It's corroded enough that you can see the inner workings of the pipe. Obviously, we'll have to take this the most cost-efficient way possible. We're actually currently considering replacing 4 pumps with just 3 pumps to save costs. The third section here concerns the most coordination, but not necessarily the most design work. So this is where we've been able to. There are a number of components in the 2 plate and frame filter presses that we intend to either replace or refurbish. However, most of these components can be replaced with simple off-the-shelf items from either the original equipment manufacturer or other suitable vendors. For many of these small items, it's actually cheaper to swap them out new off-the-shelf or in-kind versions rather than attempting to refurbish them. Things like hydraulics. Especially once you take downtime costs into account, the costs associated around sending off refurbishment and bringing it back. Take my hydraulic cylinder and just swap out in one go. As with all elements of this project, our aim is to refurbish the system in the most cost-efficient manner possible. And so we're retaining many of the most costly components, such as the large steel frame and rails. We're not planning to do anything with those, and only refurbishing other large components, such as the acid wash system, rather than replacing it. The final section of the refurbishment would concern the instrumentation and control system. Most of the instrumentation on the presses and pumps is inoperable, and the remaining items are in a poor condition. This includes safety features such as light curtains that shut down the presses if anyone accidentally gets too close, as well as control elements that allow the operators to run the system in an automated fashion. Only operators have to remain in the building throughout the entire 2 to 3 hour batch process, as the system can only be run in a fully manual mode. Replacing the control system with a modern automatic program would significantly cut operator time and allow the process to be monitored from ECL central control. The overall aim here is to replace as little as possible, refurbish existing equipment wherever we can, and retain any components that still serve us.
Real quick, just to answer your questions, each pump is 300 gallons per minute at pressure of 225 PSI. 60 horsepower motors.
Before you move on, I just want to check with the committee and board to see if there are any questions. You went through a lot of information there. Some of the items that stand out in my mind are the aspects that are inoperable and or are safety issues. And so I would just ask if you do have questions. I think that as I went through this presentation, I definitely earmarked slide 12 as being crucial in my thought process. So if you have any questions, this would be a good opportunity to address those.
Well, I don't have a question. Maybe it is a question. The system works right now, so there is instrumentation and controls for it.
It's entirely,
They are outdated.
it's outdated, it's run entirely in manual mode. So you have operators that sit there with their hand on the button running the presses. Yes, yeah, we have some instrumentation that reads pressure off the pumps and shows that the press is running. But in general, the system is running in a manual operation, which is not the way it was intended to be run. It's intended to be run.
Okay, keep going.
So this slide depicts the overall project schedule. As always, all changes from the last update are in red text. This action item concerns the award for professional engineering services on this project. As you can see, the schedule here shows a professional services RFP with an award amount of $1.1 million. It's design work, the engineering services during construction, and a 10% contingency. If the project contract before you today is awarded later this month, staff intend to come back to the board later this year with both the recommendations for the procurement awards, so that's the off-the-shelf in-kind items we talked about earlier, and the results of the preliminary design report. This preliminary design report, PDR, will contain updated estimates on both project costs and the projected payback period to facilitate further discussion about project progress with the board.
Go back a second, there's something for that. Where you just mentioned preliminary design report, so how does this thing, how's this? Talking about awarding a design contract, right?
Design and engineering services during construction.
Sorry?
And engineering services during construction. So the design portion is about $830,000, and the engineering services during construction is.
What is, on the engineering services portion, or the design services portion, I'm sorry. What are the major task elements? Do you do a preliminary design, preliminary?
Yes, so the major task elements, you've got, I've got a slide that goes through them actually. The design, if you don't mind, onto the next slide. If you don't mind, onto that.
The next slide is the one.
Yeah, the next slide goes through the design phase and what's contained within the scope of work of this contract. So you can see here, you've got obviously the general coordination and project admin is a standard task. We asked the consultant to verify that 2018 condition assessment. I'll go into it in a later slide. It's very important for risk to, a lot may have changed since 2018. We want to make sure before we get into construction on this project that we know what we're dealing with. We want to make sure that There's no components we previously thought were okay that now need refurbishment, replacement, and so on. So that's quite an important task of the project. Then we go into the preliminary design report, and it's arguably the most significant task here. So its role will be to review the condition assessment verification, delineate components between those that can be pre-procured off the shelf or in kind, and those that will require full design, the pumps, the tanks. And then it will list every component requiring replacement and refurbishment with associated costs and lead times, and produce a 30% design package for those items needing full design. The aim of this PDI is basically to have a comprehensive check-in point where both staff and the board, we can bring it back to you and assess project scope, progress, and most importantly, that return investment number and how it. So that's what the PDR will aim to do, and we're aiming to bring that back before the end of the year. We've got a very accelerated schedule on this. PDR would normally take much longer, but that's the aim of the accelerated schedule is to reduce those O&M costs. We're spending a lot of additional money in O&M. So the quicker we get things refurbished, the more money we'll save. So we aim to bring back the PDR in October, November this year. Where we can progress and see how we're doing on our return on investment. So I'll continue on from there. So after the PDR, we have the pre-procurement list. The aim of this task is to significantly reduce both the cost and time of the project over a standard capital project by enabling the district to procure the bulk of the components prior to construction. So when we went through our assessment of the items requiring purchase and replacement, there are a large number of items, like I said, that could be purchased off the shelf or in kind. They don't require a full design application. So we are pulling the full design of those from the scope of the consultant, and we've made them into a pre-procurement item. Task 5 will be more akin to a standard design stage, where the consultant will produce 100% design submittals for all the components and subsystems that we identified as requiring detailed design. The feed pump system, the instrumentation control system, and those 2 sludge condition tanks. Task 6, the project phasing plan scheduling, it's normally included, you typically see it in the general coordination and project admin stage. However, because this project will be conducted while we're still running the solids handling system, it's very important that we carefully plan and phase this. We want to minimize any disruption to day-to-day running, but also we want to plan it out so that we implement any O&M cost saving measures as early as possible, such as the cloths. So that was something we identified in-house that we could bring forward to bring those O&M costs down straight away. And then we're going to be working with our task 6 with our design consultant to find any other quick wins, if you will, to reduce the O&M costs as early as possible. Slide, please, unless there are any questions. So this slide details West Basin's purpose regarding the issuing of the contract and how staff would approach the potential risks inherent in the project. The overall purpose of this project is to refurbish the system in a cost-effective manner while minimizing. So as we discussed before, this project has a potential buyback period of 4.7 years. There are several things that could change this. So the project coming in under budget would obviously reduce that return on investment, bring it forwards, and likewise an over budget project would increase it. It's also important to note that this estimate assumes that our influent water quality remains steady and reasonably good over the next few years. If we have a dip in water quality from Hyperion, that would raise our baseline O&M cost considerably as we try to extract the excess solids from the system, which would make this project more vital and potentially significantly reducing that period, because a refurbished system can better remove those solids from the system as they're put in through the. But the 4.7 year target is our baseline. The aim is to shorten that payback period as much as possible. This project will be made with that payback period in mind. Every time we have cost and schedule forecasts, every time they're updated, they'll be assessed against that criteria. The intention here is that every time I bring this project back before you, we'll give you an updated number, and the aim is to have that number slowly ticking down over time as we approach that buyback. If that number, if we find anything in the project that increases it or even reduces it, we'll bring that before you so we can discuss any impacts and available options to us. Slide, unless there are any questions. So it's always Important with such finely balanced projects to consider potential risks. This slide details what we've identified as the three main potential risks as we move forward with this project and how we intend to mitigate. First, the most serious risk here is that we find a major subsystem or component that requires refurbishment that was previously deemed to be in an acceptable condition. By that, task number 2, the verification of 2018 condition assessment, is so important. It allows staff and the board to reassess the project as a whole at the PDR stage with current information about the condition. So that's made even more important by recent changes in water quality since 2018. At such high loading, trying to get rid of that excess solids from the system would have had a significant effect. What would we verify that 2018 conditions? This task will also mitigate the second risk. The components previously believed to be replaceable by off the shelf or in kind could require more detailed design. So I mentioned those hydraulic cylinders earlier. We should be able to replace those off the shelf. But if, say, for example, that particular type or style or dimensions are no longer available off the shelf, we may need to design them or have custom fittings. So that's another important risk to consider and another thing we evaluate in the PDR stage and bring back to you. As I mentioned, we're aiming to bring back the PDR before the end of this calendar year. Not produced by the consultant will also take into account current costs and lead times for all items that are being pre-procured. Mitigate the third risk stated here. The market forces have affected the procurement periods or costs of such components. Obviously, we can't fully remove this risk, especially in the consultant will be tasked with maintaining updated quotes for these components to ensure that the risk is minimized. So we'll ensure those quotes are accurate in date so that lead times are current. We know when we need to procure equipment to prevent delays to the project. As I've stated a couple of times, the intention of staff is that all change orders on the project, any additional costs, any surprises, are assessed against the current return on investment calculations. Our aim is to reduce that 4.7-year return on investment. Baseline and any change order that increases this time will not be implemented unless absolutely necessary.
Can I ask just one thing on the verification? So you mentioned 2018. 2018, what happened? There was a very thorough inspection of everything.
Yes, yeah, we hired a consultant to perform a comprehensive condition assessment, building and the tanks outside of most refurbishment today. Went through every single component and provided a condition assessment of that component, expected useful life, and recommendations based on that. That 2018 work with the consultant then went on to provide recommendations for what to do next. Recommended replacing the system, ripping out the centrifuge in, which is a different type of solids handling system. We did a trial of that system. It did work. However, in recent years, the way the centrifuge works is a very effective way of reducing solids, removing solids from the process, but it results in a lower density cake, which, as we've seen, our haulage costs get higher and higher each year, means the centrifuge ends up being more expensive in O&M costs than the refurbishing process. So we move back to the refurbishing process. But yeah, that's what the
It's a pretty hands-on operation now. Why aren't the O&M people out there able to assess further deterioration of systems and say, hey, wait a second, we need to replace this also or these components? Why is it that we would need of additional verification 4 years later that wasn't ongoing?
So they are able to assess that. So we are hearing continual reports from the contract operators that items need to be replaced, that the pump system needs replacing as a whole. It's grown beyond kind of a simple plug and place replacement and become an overall system refurbishment. That's why we're doing this now. However, it is important to have the consultant we're bringing on board get eyes on the system and go through each individual component and verify it against. Just to ensure that they know exactly the condition of the system moving forward and can provide any recommendations in the PDR. I mean, the alternative would be to conduct interviews with contract operators, and the necessary expertise may not be there, and it's more anecdotal evidence. Go to the next slide. Go back one. So this slide shows a chart we've seen many times before now on this project. It depicts the net present value of both the do nothing option A and the proposed refurbishment option B over a period of 15 years.
Your favorite graph,
Sorry?
favorite graph.
Sorry.
It's my favorite. Favorite.
The table to the right here shows the anticipated savings of undertaking a refurbishment. As you can see, the initial capital expenditure of the project over the next 2 years is offset by the operations and maintenance savings with each passing year after the second year of the project and upon its completion. So it's anticipated that the break-even point will occur sometime in late 2027 with our current calculations, with the savings leading to a net positive after this point. Obviously, I've got an additional line there that per recent discussions with our counterparts at LSAN, it seems that the potential switch to our influent water at ECL would be occurring in approximately 9 to 10 years at the earliest. This would result in the refurbishment project realizing cost savings to the district of between $15.5 and $19.5 million. So this slide details the solicitation process we followed to arrive at a recommendation today. On March 21st of this year, staff posted the request for proposals on our online procurement system, Mercell. It was also advertised on our website and through social media. Applicants state on the procurement system they were participating, which means they've downloaded the documentation and clicked a button stating they're intended to participate in the process. A pre-proposal presentation site tour was conducted on March 30th. It was attended by 14 people representing 6 different consultancies. On May 11th, West Basin received 3 proposals reviewed by 4 West Basin staff members over the following week, according to the scoring schedule that you can see in attachment. Contacted with no adverse comments or items of concern registered. 3 respondents were invited to interviews over the week of May 22nd. These interviews were conducted with a panel of 5 people, so that was the original 4 West Basin staff members and an external panelist from the City of Erskine.
Where?
The City of Erskine. The interviews consisted of a short presentation followed by a set of questions asked to each candidate. They were scored out of 20, and this was added to the proposal score for a total score of 106 available points. The highest scoring candidate was Arcadis US Incorporated, who is being recommended on a best value basis with a total negotiated cost of $998,440. As I mentioned, the individual scoring can be viewed in detail on attachment B. I should note here that one of the main reasons Arcadis scores so well is that they have undertaken a very similar project in Ohio, refurbishing plate and frame filter presses from the same manufacturer as ours and installed at a similar time. The same members that undertook that project in 2018, and so they were deemed to be one of the safest choices for this design. Costly change orders or ongoing responses. Next slide, please, Mr.
So,
Director Travers, did you have a question?
well, I was gonna ask about what was the scoring criteria, so based on your last comment, John, it was that Arcadis has very, very recent or almost concurrent experience on replacing a similar filter press as this one.
Yes, yes. So we looked at the proposal, and that was scored out to 80 points. And we looked at things like technical approach and methodology. We looked at the key personnel, whether they had experience in this sort of work, whether they had the requisite qualifications. So, for example, whether the project manager may have had, the MP certification. And Arcadis, as I mentioned, have brought in a number of team members from that job in Ohio, so they had significant expertise. We looked at what we call all the references. We looked at the overall layout of the.
So are you gonna get the same project manager as on that particular project?
No, it's not the same project manager. It's a local project manager. Yeah, it's the same designers. It's actually the same instrumentation and control team as well, which is quite a significant part of the project. So they designed a whole new instrumentation and control system up in Ohio. And so there's a significant portion of the key personnel that will be the same for the project.
I wanted to hear that, so thank you.
Is that?
I wanted to hear that. The team was kind of the same team that was on the other job.
Yes, roughly half of the team, I believe.
That's good.
Then will we make the same project manager available?
I don't believe so. I believe the intention, well, whichever. But Christine on this one. This is Christine Cotton from Arcadis.
Hi, Christine, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing? So the project manager is local, that lives in Southern California. And we have the project manager for the Ohio project is actually a technical advisor. That's Kurt. And then we have the design manager who's leading the technical part of the design. He's actually from Ohio. His name is Brad. So we tried to integrate between getting the best of the best from Ohio with having a local presence so that we could come, you know, to the board meeting and whatever else is necessary to make sure we got the right.
The design team manager will be the same?
Yes. They went to Ohio, you'll be helping here.
Thank you.
Any further questions? So this slide depicts the anticipated expenditure on the project in each fiscal year moving forwards. As you can see, the bulk of the expenditure of this past fiscal year has been on replacing those filter cloths, which was completed in May for a total of $174,000, shown here there's 10,000. This work is estimated to generate savings of approximately $14,000 per month. Engineering services contract is approved. We intend to begin the design on this project in July next month. So that's the outset of the 2023-2024 fiscal year. The design work itself is intended to take approximately 8 months and cost a total of $830,000. This will form the bulk of the contract that we're discussing today, with $170,000 of the contract being for engineering services during construction. In the 2023-2024 fiscal year, we also intend to begin pre-procurement of the longer lead time components. As you can see here, we anticipate an initial expenditure of $800,000 of the total expected $4.7 million pre-procurement cost, with the remainder of this cost falling in the following fiscal year. We also anticipate beginning initial construction towards the end of next fiscal year. So we're aiming to award the construction contract in spring. However, we'll be onboarding a construction management consultant prior to that to assist in the bidding phase. This work results in an anticipated expenditure of $2.7 million for the next fiscal year, which is the amount allocated to the project in the 2023 budget that's before the board later this month. The bulk of the construction will fall in fiscal year 2024-2025 with an intended completion date in early summer of 2025. This will also be the fiscal year in which most of the pre-procured components arrive, and so you see the estimated $3.9 million expenditure there. These two items combine to generate the bulk of the project expenditure at $12.3 million in fiscal year 2020. So this penultimate slide details the entire project expenditure from the early internal work in 2016 through to the projected end of the project. By the time this project concludes in 2025, the total anticipated expenditure will be $15.95 million. As of the latest refinery agreement amendments 2021, West Basin has secured $2,635,590 of refinery funding. Our total expenditure across the life of the project to $13.31 million. I'd note if we were to base our return on investment rate on purely of our own expenditure and remove the refinery expenditure, that 4.7-year break-even point reduces to 4.2 years. It should also be noted that this refinery funding has been paid to the district via monthly installments and would need to be refunded if this project is cancelled as per. Next slide. So that brings me to the recommendation for you today. Staff recommends awarding the contract for professional engineering services on the solids handling improvements project to Arcadis US Incorporated for a contract amount of $998,440 with a 10% contingency of $99,844 for a total not to exceed amount of $1,098,284. I do have some pictures after this presentation, so I'm happy to answer questions about pictures, about the presentation, and memo itself.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any questions, Director Williams?
Yes, I have a question to our general manager. Are you satisfied with this approach and that we have spent enough time with our they are people that we deal with in what we do, in that we've made enough contact with people doing similar work in our circle, and you're happy with the approach and the timing and everything.
Yes, Director Williams, to answer your question, and this is a program and project that I got familiar with back in 2021 while serving as the interim general manager. I know that our staff has not just gone back to sharpen the pencil, but to look at this program and project from different angles, trying to figure out how best can we do what we need to do at the Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility. I'm very satisfied right now with the mix of not just refurbishment, but replacement when cost savings are there. I was very moved by, I think it was packet page 11, looking at the benefits of this project. I do recognize that we can get some more details. We can sit with those experts and make sure that we fine tune exactly what those net savings will be. But it's difficult to be at the ECL facility and not notice that a great deal of work needs to be done. And this project, I think, will help get us to where we need to get to in the future. So I definitely want to say thank you to staff. We've met on this project, not just back in 2021, but under Mr. Greg Reed's tenure here at West Basin, continue to work on that. And then, of course, Bart, head of executive manager of engineering operations, met with his staff numerous times over the past several weeks to be ready for today's presentation to answer any and all questions. I recognize that maybe we have one or two additional, but I do want to say thank you to Barkev and the entire engineering team for the preparation today. So I am very well satisfied.
Well, I am too. Thank you.
Yeah, me too.
You don't have any other questions, Director here?
No.
I already asked some questions. I would appreciate seeing some of that information. If we can bring back before we move this forward, some answers that are a little bit more objective instead and trying to flush out, especially on that packet page 11, that the general manager.
Wait, I'm sorry, I'm not understanding what you're saying.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was saying that I would appreciate that before we move this forward, that we come back and answer the questions I asked earlier, specifically clarifying some of those cost savings on package page 11 that the general manager just referred to.
Was that delay getting underway?
It will delay it by about a month.
Month. That, could you handle a month, the project handle a month delay?
So we had a month delay. I will say that our forecasts show that each month is roughly $250,000 in O&M costs. We could be saving down the line, but we can probably find that month somewhere else in the project.
Time is money.
Time is money, and on this particular project, it's been an urgency project since the first day I got here, and that was 2 years ago. It continues to be an urgency project, but we still get along. And I appreciate the fact that this will probably result in some savings. But so did the replacement of the filter cloth, and that was at a cost of $170,000. You can replace the filter cloth 10 times over, and it won't be necessarily every year. And that's only going to cost you $1.7 million. And we're looking here at potentially spending $15 million. So if I'm going to spend $15 million, I'd like to be able to have some answers to some questions. And that's why I asked.
Okay.
Okay, so I would appreciate just bringing this back with additional answers to the questions I raised earlier. If that's okay, then we could do that. But that would be my recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a quick question? Are we able to reach back out? I know our board meeting is on Monday. It's Wednesday afternoon. To what degree could we sit down and have those meetings tomorrow and or Friday?
We can reach back out to the experts. I have some numbers ready for Monday.
Able to, because this sits on the, as it's on our E&O committee, we could place it on the board agenda. If we don't have that information, we could pull that item at the board meeting.
You know, I don't believe that a month is gonna be out. I heard the $250,000 number. I've also heard the urgency of this project, and I understand it's important, but I'm not convinced of that super urgency component that I keep hearing. And so I don't want to rush anything because it's the same thing and, you know, raises other questions. So I'd rather have a thoughtful presentation come back.
What, am I hearing you that you do not believe this should go forward at all, that we should wait
That we should have a thoughtful presentation come back in a month. I don't think.
in a month?
That's when we're gonna meet again.
The last time? Okay, he says it won't hurt, so.
With that, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the Nash Street lateral agreement. So, Mr. General Manager, would you like to introduce that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as you mentioned, the next item is item 5D. And for this presentation, we do have Orlando Rodriguez here. And this does begin on packet page 27.
Thank you, EJ. Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez and members of the committee. As EJ mentioned, today I'll be speaking about developer agreement between CDC Mart East Campus 2 and West Basin regarding the Nash Street lateral project. On page 27 of the agenda packet, you will find a copy of the staff report that's being shown right now on the screen. So first, I would like to start off with some background information about the project itself. Back in 2011, in partnership with the city of El Segundo, Raytheon filed for a specific plan for its campus to allow expanded use on its property. The specific plan was adopted in 2015, and subsequently, Raytheon began selling parcels, including several to the developer CDC Mart East Campus 2. As part of the specific plan, the developer will construct a new public road, the existing actually Nash Street, an extension of it, which will be dedicated to the city of El Segundo upon completion, along with the new utility infrastructure that will serve the new parcels that they just purchased. Back in 2020, the developer contacted West Basin staff about obtaining recycled water for irrigation, including on-site and off-site landscaped areas. The parcels, which are 10 in total, are designated for commercial, office, warehouse, and light industrial use, including, as you probably heard, the new Los Angeles Chargers team headquarters and training facility. To give you some context, if you turn to page 30 of the agenda packet, you will see a project location map, and it might be a little bit difficult to see there, but right in the middle, kind of that peach color, is the Raytheon campus itself. And kind of going from north to south on the east side is the proposed street extension. And the Chargers facility itself is kind of highlighted on the south side in that kind of neon color. And the recycled water lateral, the proposed one will be connecting to our existing 6-inch lateral just on Hughes Way, just east of the Edward C. Little facility. So that'll be kind of going along the north direction, just east of the campus. So the developer has purchased kind of 10 parcels along the east side there, and they all be served by this new proposed pipeline they're going to construct. So after several discussions and submittal reviews, the developer, as mentioned, will install about 3,400 feet of 6-inch diameter pipeline. And they will also construct the medians there that will be serving recycled water too as well, just on-site and off-site. In coordination with West Basin's legal counsel, staff have developed the following developer agreement, W3095, shown on page 31 of the agenda packet. Some of the requirements from the agreement are that the recycled water service connection construction drawings shall be reviewed and approved by staff prior to construction. Construction of the new service pipeline shall be inspected by staff and third-party inspectors. The developer shall fully reimburse West Basin for all staff, consultant, and third-party inspector costs incurred by West Basin for design review and inspection services. We've actually estimated those now. So prior to execution of the agreement, the developer will give West Basin a check for those costs. So right now, those costs are estimated at about $96,531. And then also the developer shall fully comply with all recycled water use requirements. So the construction of the pipeline itself is estimated to start around September of this year and will be completed the following month in October, following your feet. Upon completion of the project and acceptance by West Basin, ownership of the new service pipeline shall be transferred to West Basin, which includes a 12-month warranty period where the developer shall be liable for costs incurred by West Basin due to deficiencies in the newly installed recycled water infrastructure. And at this point, I would like to read the recommendation that staff recommends that the board authorize the acting general manager to execute agreement W3095 with CDC MAR East Campus 2 for the Nash Street lateral project. And with that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Director Williams, any questions?
It's pretty straightforward to me. No.
Director Dier? I have one question. So we're gonna be installing, you said it's a 6-inch line.
They will be installed.
It is.
Yeah.
I will be installing. So why are we not connecting it to the recycled water line in El Segundo? And completing the loop?
We did consider that in the past, and one of the, I guess you could say, why we didn't was because of the line itself on El Segundo Boulevard. I believe it's a pre-stressed concrete line. And tapping into that, there was some concern that just the age of the line itself, there might be an issue tapping in, and that line serves our north system. So we did not at that time consider connecting to it. It's just going to terminate just off of it. We did consider it at one point, but it was decided ultimately not to connect to it.
This is something that the developer should be paying.
Yes.
It might be worthwhile revisiting that and trying to connect that, because right now you're extending the line, you're gonna have a dead end. And dead ends on recycled water lines are not the best situation that you want to find yourself in. They do lead to water quality issues, et cetera. It would be better to have a loop system. And it looks like, you're 50 feet from major line that you connect to. You have a loop system, you have circulation. Your potential for water quality issues are much lower. Creating a dead end system. So I like the project. I think it's a good idea. I would just like to see the loop completed. Can we revisit that?
I agree with you there. I thought we were always looking for every opportunity to loop our system.
Yeah, I mean, we did consider it. Unfortunately, the decision was made ultimately not to connect to it because of the line on El Segundo Boulevard, but we can
It can
revisit
be
that.
done. It's an old, I get that it's an older pre-stressed, you said it was pre-stressed concrete line?
Yes.
But it can still be done, and
Yeah, we could reach back out and see what it would entail, because we would, well, yeah, we still have time. I mean, the line's gonna be constructed in September, so we might be able to incorporate that.
But
so
make sure,
I would move this forward
Absolutely.
with the fact that the next time we see this particular illustration, there's a connection at El Segundo. The line is looped.
loop our system every opportunity we Yeah. So I agree with you.
So with that condition, we will move this one forward.
That can,
You agree?
moving it, yes.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on with our agenda, next item's up is the information calendar. And the first item is the West Basin Project Labor Agreement. Do we want a full presentation of this? It's already after 5.
Mr. Chairman, the issue of a project labor agreement was actually requested by one of the West Basin Board of Directors. I know that she's not with us today, but she did ask for additional information related to the PLA. Staff did prepare a pretty extensive, I think, overview, update, and review of our PLA. I think that it stands on its own if the directors want to review that at their leisure. Otherwise, we do have staff that's here to present the information to you.
Like to see the full presentation of
No, thank you.
Director Deere? Okay, I think we can go ahead and read the information in the packet. It is pretty comprehensive. There's a lot of information in there. And then we can just move on to the next item. Okay. So let's move on to the monthly engineering report.
Yes, and for this presentation, we have our manager of engineering, Mr. Wendell Johnson.
Afternoon, Chairman Alvarez and rest of the members of the board. If you could please turn to, go off because of the presentation. If you could please turn to agenda packet 82 for presentation. I want to point out a couple new items in this presentation before we go through there. We have a new section, which is the look ahead section, and that starts on page 83. Okay, and 84 and 85. Okay, these are a look ahead to tell you what type of items are coming in the months to come. In this particular case, we have one action item and one informational item coming in July. That's on packet page 84. Okay, and the detail for the first informational of the first action item is on page 85. Okay. And then the details for the informational item on the distributed control system replacement is on agenda packet page 86. We also provided you, at the request of the directors, an additional attachment, and this is attachment B. The first part of attachment B is the familiar information that you've seen every month that goes over the actual project budgets that are in this year's CIP. We added a section which includes the engineer vendors. And as we go through this presentation about the update of the CIP, we'll get to that final section, and I'm prepared to answer any questions that you may have on that. But for the first highlighted project, I have Veronica here to give you an update on the Palos Verdes Recycled Water Pipeline Project.
You can forward to page 7, I believe, of the package. Yeah. And directors, this is basically an exhibit that we have been working with the City of Torrance as well as with our designers to prepare as part of the agreement that the City Council approved when the pump station basically was approved for the new location site. One of the items that had been requested was basically to produce some kind of exhibits that will provide education in regards to recycled water. So we've been working with the city, and basically the exhibit that you see in front of you is one of the exhibits that has been already reviewed by them and approved. So these will be posted along the fence that will be surrounding the pump station. And basically just gives a little bit of information in regards to recycled water and where it's coming from, and basically a little bit of illustration of our distribution system. On the next slide, this is this is the second exhibit that will be shown and basically kind of shows the information regarding on why the pump station is important. I think you are familiar with the image below. It has been a complete hit with everybody. I feel like that provides a lot of information on why it's important to have a pump station where the elevation is very low. In the next exhibit, please, the next page. So this is just basically a status of the project. We awarded the construction of the pipeline component to Blois Construction and in March, and we have all contracts executed. So we have issued already a notice to proceed to the contractor with the date of June 26th. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to be having our pre-construction meeting. So we're in the process of organizing that with cities as well as all the team members that are participating in the construction team. We are also anticipating the starting of the construction bidding process this coming June, basically at the end of next week, actually. So that will be going up for bid. We're going to be advertising for approximately like more than the 2 days that we typically give, because essentially one of the requirements as a good faith effort that is prerequisite on the loan is like to allow the contractors to advertise for 30 days. As you might remember, during the pipeline, we went through that process that we had to extend the time to allow for that good faith effort. So we're anticipating that. And our plans will be like to come to the board in August for construction award. And on the next slide, please. Okay, yeah. So that the next slide is just basically an anticipation of that schedule. Starting with the construction of the pipeline on June 26th, and then it's a 270 calendar day construction. So our anticipation will be March of 2024. And then the pump station advertising is starting again at the end of June with a pump station completion in May of next year. And again, our plans are to come to the board for construction award in August. In anticipation of all the construction activities that we are going to be having, we're also working with our public information department in regards to the community outreach. Murakami Communication is one of the team members who will be doing basically all the outreach on behalf of the pipeline project as well as the pump station. We have already drafted the notices that will be sent out, so it's just a matter of filling out the blanks with dates and the starting locations. So that way, it will facilitate the process. After July 4th, our community outreach team will be going out to the streets to do that one-on-one canvassing and basically outreach to all the community members along the alignment. In regards to any advertising on the website, again, our public information department will be working with the team and will allow, we'll provide that information to directors so they are aware of the activity that is happening. So with that, I conclude my presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions.
That's back to me. We'll take some questions at the end. If you could turn to packet page 93, I'm going to stand in for Kevin, and we're going to go over some of the highlights of the JMM Phase 2 expansion project. Welcoming the first day of summer here. Our expectation is to be done with this project by mid or late summer of this year. On the left-hand side, workers are installing a concrete housekeeping pad. Okay, we're starting to finish up things around the site. You can also see that the base core for the paving road has been placed in front of that. On your right-hand side, we are pulling a lot of electrical wire to set up the controls and to power up the system. Edison itself has been out to the facility to drop a transformer and also to tie in various circuits that are out there. Next page, please. As you're seeing on the right-hand side, this is the exit road leaving out of JMM Carson. To the right, you can see the structure of the CMF facility. Okay, and on the left-hand side, they are doing some grinding right in front of the entrance building where the control room is. Okay, we're gonna drop down to the next page, page 95. The subcontractor is installing piping as well as putting coating on the piping. And both of those pictures, right and left. Move down to page 96. Again, they're finishing up some of the conduit and pulling wire in the conduit. And on the right-hand side, we're taking a look at, this is a inspection of the air gap in the MF product tank. What we were experiencing out there, as you can see, there's kind of a circle there. We're experiencing wind blowing the water and the water itself actually going down the side of the tank, and it's producing algae growth on the side of the tank. And so we had an inspector back out there to take a look at the project and see what type of corrective action we can do so that we can abate this particular problem here. Okay, on slide 97 is an overall schedule update. We're in the process of checking into delays that were caused by procurement, the inability to get certain type of parts. If you've gone out to any other wastewater sites, they're always asking if you have a spare VFD or some spare controller parts. But anyway, we've experienced a little bit of delay, and the team is addressing that right now. The cost of construction to date, we're at about 83%. Okay, and the requested RFIs, you've had quite a bit of them, and it's been 298. And of the 298, 293 have been processed. The total amount of submittals for this project to date is 355, and we've processed about 349. Okay, one of my favorite parts of this project is the next slide is the PLA. Again, we're reporting on the PLA to show that tier 1, we've got a 30% participation. Tier 1 consists of people that live within 10 miles of the DLD building. The at-risk or transitional workers, we have a 7.7% participation in this. These are people that are challenged when it comes to getting jobs. They may have experienced homelessness in the past. They may be single parents. There's a whole list of criterias. The contractor has been exceptional in the ability for him to utilize apprenticeship, our next generation of skilled trade workers that will be building for us. Next page, 99. And these are the numbers here, okay? And these are the numbers by division and also by tiers, okay? And it's important to do a realization on that. This is your value added to the community, and I know that is part of the mission of this board and of this organization is to engage the community and create job opportunities whenever it's possible. And so you can see that total to date on this particular project, we've created well over 35,000 total hours. And we're talking about really good paying jobs, and generally the lowest paid person on this particular project is the first year apprentice, which is half the cost of a journeyman. The first year apprentice makes approximately $21 an hour. It takes them about 3,000 hours in order to become a journeyman on this course of developing a trade. Okay, and so the utilization of the apprentice will help these people get to their journeyman level. Okay, and moving on to page 100. Okay, this gives you the classification of the workers that are out there: carpenters, cement masons, electrician, iron workers, and so forth, and what division or what percentage of the division these skilled craft people actually come from. And now I'd like to go ahead and introduce Orlando again, and he's going to give you an update on the South Bay I-405 Auxiliary Lane project.
And we're going to come back and discuss this particular project. then
Sure,
After Orlando.
sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Wendell. Perfect. So first, I'd like to kind of start off with the larger overall project that essentially initiated our project that we're going to discuss a little bit later. So back in 2018, Caltrans, in partnership with the South Bay COG, applied for a Measure R funding through LA Metro for the I-405 Auxiliary Lanes Improvements Project. This project is for 7 additional auxiliary lanes along the I-405 between I-105 and Artesia Boulevard. I don't know how familiar you are, but my understanding is this is a pretty notorious part of the I-405 along this stretch. The goal of their project.
Sat there for half an hour today.
Yeah, I've heard of that for numerous times. So the goal of their project, unsurprisingly so, is to improve traffic time reliability, improve safety, and obviously they're going to do that by reducing traffic congestion along that stretch. Due to the addition of the new auxiliary lanes, a bridge widening is required at the overpass location. In particular, the bridge widening will require new piles to be installed for the new bridge structure above. The new piles present challenges to the existing utilities below, where utility owners must comply with Caltrans separation requirements and their guidelines. The new, next slide, please, sorry. So here we are right now on page 103 of the agenda packet for those that are following along. So back in October of last year, 2022, HDR, which is the onboard design consultant for the Caltrans project, reached out to staff to discuss the potential conflict with our 42-inch recycled water pipeline at Marine Avenue and the I-405. This particular section of pipe was installed in 1993 through an encroachment permit with Caltrans, being that it is their right-of-way. And without prior rights as well, meaning that we must adhere to Caltrans requirements in their right-of-way. Based on the latest Caltrans utility permits manual, recycled water pipelines are deemed to be high priority utilities. So what does that mean? Essentially, they require either to be relocated or encased to prevent a line break from essentially washing out either existing foundations or new proposed foundations. So they consider this to be pretty critical for their project. So at Marine Avenue specifically, 2 piles are being proposed, one on each side of the I-405. And per Caltrans, they're requiring us to essentially encase the pipe 30 feet at each location. So being that there's 2, they're requiring 60 feet in total of some kind of pipeline encasement. Additionally,
Is that pipeline?
sorry,
What material is that pipeline, or pipeline there?
I believe it's steel at this
Oh,
location.
the steel pipe?
Yeah. So, and one kind of,
Should we know that?
I would think so.
Yeah.
yes, I could get back to you to fully confirm that, but I believe it is steel, if I recall correctly. One thing I do want to mention about this particular location is, although the construction itself or the installation of the pipeline encasement will be completely in Caltrans right away, the traffic control necessary for this being Marine Avenue is kind of like a city boundary between multiple cities, like the center line. So We will be encroaching into Redondo Beach, Hawthorne, and Lawndale. So we will be requiring to pull an encroachment permit for those different cities along with Caltrans. And last but not least, we will be doing excavation, the installation of the encasement, restoration of the pavement, and then also the traffic control itself. So if you see there on the right side is essentially a cross section at one of the locations of the new pile. So our recycled water 42-inch line is kind of in the blue there, just to the right of the center line or the center of the cross section. And the proposed pile just to the left of that, 7 feet in diameter. So right now we have about 3.5 feet of separation between us. So fortunately, when we started these conversations with the HDR and Caltrans, they were asking us to relocate the pipe, which would be at a big expense to West Basin. So we were able to further discuss with them our options, and we ended up coming up with the encasement instead for this. Please. And we are now on page 104 of the agenda packet. So staff prepared an RFP for the preparation of plan specifications and estimates for the pipeline encasement. Per Caltrans, we specified that the proposed encasement shall comply with Chapter 600 of their Caltrans Utility Permits Manual. The project shall be executed on a task order basis. So everything from ranging, as you see there, tasks 1 through 5, from like general coordination, meetings and so forth, all the way till the project closeout phase for this. Next slide, please. And we are now on page 105. On May 10th, last month, staff, we issued an RFP to our on-call design consultants. Following the issuance of the RFP, we did hold a pre-proposal meeting on May 23rd. That meeting was attended by 3 of our consultants, AKM, Black & Veatch, and Tetra Tech. Proposals were due on June 1st, and we received 2 proposals, one from Black & Veatch and one from Tetra Tech. We reviewed and evaluated the proposals internally, and Tetra Tech was deemed the highest rated consultant. We did submit references. We called the references, and they all gave glowing remarks about Tetra Tech. So last week on June 15th, we notified Tetra Tech of the contract award, and then issued a contract release for $143,000 for design services. And that will start next month for the design of the pipeline encasement and so forth. And one other point out to me that the original proposal amount was about $167,000, so we were able to negotiate them down to $143,000. And I was just giving you some information that there at that particular location, the pipe is actually ductile iron, not steel. So apologies for that. That's it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Gordon, the last question here, minor. Who is handling the construction for Caltrans? Who's there? How are they handling the construction engineering?
They don't have anybody on board just yet. They're still in the design process. HDR's doing the design
For Caltrans?
Yes. So the goal is they're slated to start construction about spring of next year, 2024. So what they want from us is to install this pipeline encasement before they go in.
Right. Sure.
Right. So our goal is to actually do our work. Design shall be done around September of this year, and we would install the pipeline encasement before the end of the year. So
There looks like something's going on out there between, I guess it would be Torrance, not the city of Torrance.
along the I-405.
Yeah, right there.
I don't believe that's this project.
This is gonna be up at Marine.
Right, Marine, that's Lawndale.
Well, the overall,
Lawndale, Redondo, and
Redondo.
Dawson.
well, the overall project itself is from I-105 to Artesia, but they're still in design phase, so they haven't started any kind of construction. That was, I think.
So what is that
that's-
construction work out there now?
I'm not aware. That's not this project. That's. it's
There
another
is construction work out there now. They're putting up sound walls and they're widening, off ramps.
Okay,
And it is, costing us time because I.
Yeah.
Sit out there. I got here right at 4. And I had left plenty of time, but. Okay, did you have any questions? Right, anything else, or we can go back now to some of the other, the.
Just one more. We have an update on the recycled water fill station, Camille.
Thank you, Wendell. Good afternoon, members of the committee. So I'll give you a brief update. If you could come with me to the packet page 107. Basically, in the last month and a half, we were able to finalize the engineering report. And so we worked with our sub-consultant, Woodard and Curran, who's a sub of Hazen and Sawyer, to receive the final supplemental engineer report on May 19th. And we submitted it to State Water Resources Division of Drinking Water on May 23rd. And so currently we are working with our own staff to notify the West Basin customer retailers of the upcoming fill station installation. Separately, we are also working with Woodard and Curran to perform the Title 22 permit update. So that is beginning. And then on the feasibility analysis and design component of the project, we received the final design drawings from our consultant Tetra Tech on June 8th. So we are currently procuring equipment for the project, as well as looking at the analysis of potential remote fill stations for the technical memorandum 2 that Tetra Tech will be preparing. And so I'm also working with our public information staff to prepare for the fill station operation. So that includes preparing a website as well as the signage that will be on site. And we anticipate the fill station to operate for 3 months once we are able to acquire the approval from the regulatory agencies and also acquire all the equipment and install it. And we want to have the fill station operate twice a week, 1 weekend per month for 3 months with 2 fill station attendants and 1 site supervisor. And so we anticipate that operation to hopefully occur in the next 2 months around August. And with that, that concludes my update.
Thank you.
Want to go back to page 97 and agenda packet for JMM Carson.
Okay, so, well, before the, AMN plant, can we go back to this, recycled water line, Palos Verdes recycled water line extension? Do you have any questions on this? And you're happy with the community outreach?
Yes.
So right now, on that one, I just wanted some clarification, because, you know, we awarded the contract for the pipeline construction, and that's notice to proceed is gonna be issued, next week.
It was issued already, and
Oh.
the starting date is June 26th.
Okay. So next week is the kickoff of the actual construction start date. The pump stations then is pretty much on target to move forward with the schedule that's provided here, or is there going to be some slippage on that?
Can you repeat the last portion?
On the pump station, is that schedule that you gave us today pretty much going to be on target, or is there some potential slippage on that one?
So right now, this is our expectation. We have met many times with all the permitting agencies and addressed their comments. So basically, this is basically the bid package that is addressing their comments. Again, we are submitting this bid package also to those agencies for final approval. But again, we have gone through all their comments. We have met many times. And basically, you know, unless they come back with something completely different, you know, which is not our expectation at this point, this is the schedule that we're looking into. Again, right now, our anticipation is to include that time that contractors do need for that good faith effort. So we'll be bringing the results of the bidding. That's our plan, coming in August.
So You're gonna go one more round of submitting you got comments from all the permitting, agencies that you gotta deal with.
For
You
final.
incorporated that in the, contract drawing, and that is under review one more time.
No, we did that already, so this is the final.
Okay, so we're done with the reviews. Did you, I didn't hear that pump station advertisement is gonna be June, June's over in a week. So is that gonna go out to bid this month?
Yes, that's our expectations to go out for bid next week essentially and, you know, start the process.
You'll be bringing it back for award in August.
Yes, and yeah, and I believe a couple of months ago, we came and requested the board to allow us to start the advertising process as soon as we could. So we have gone through that process already. So now the next update will be basically in July to let you know what the status of the bidding is. And then in August will be for construction award.
They're basically the same project, but two parallel activities, and they both need to be completed for the project to work. So we need to keep that one pretty much on the timeline as it is. It's already, the pump station's gonna finish a couple months later than the pipeline. If we can move on to the J&M plant. Do you have any questions on that, Director Williams? Director Deere, do you have any questions? No. Okay, last month on that project, we talked about a couple of things, and I would like to, get some updates on that. One was the, addition of the, enhanced garden on, along the, sidewalk there in the frontage of the plant. How is that coming along?
I don't know if we got authorization to actually do that work.
Where we left it off is that you authorized us to go get quotes and to come back and see exactly how much it's going to cost. I believe that was the direction.
This is with the landscaping?
Yeah.
That's correct.
So I'm just wondering what's happening.
Get the quotes yet? We haven't gotten the quotes yet.
We haven't seen the quotes yet.
Because I think when that presentation was made last month, there was an estimate for what that would cost. And the presentation basically stated that there was going to be sufficient funds available and other savings in that project to pay for that. All right. Maybe we can, next month, when we update this project, address that issue. The other item that we talked about last month on that project is the timing on it, and the project is basically not on schedule, but beyond the original delivery date. So where are we time-wise?
Currently, the contract days that are the contract end date is June 31st or June 30th. Right now, we're in a process of finalizing some potential change orders, which has time-related change orders that are involved in that. And so we're in the process of analysis, doing an analysis of those time requests for those particular areas of work that had to be done.
We discussed that a little bit last month, and it would be nice if we could get a real update, because it seemed like you had an idea of how many days they were entitled to for some of the weather and procurement issues. But the request or the time allowed for that versus the time that's elapsed since the construction completion date is significant. And there's the issue of liquidated damages and the imposition of liquidated damages to try to sort of recover some of the costs of the additional construction management services. I was hoping to get an update on that.
Director Alvarez, we just received this Monday the documentation from the contractor that they provided to support their municipal time claims. So that documentation is currently under review. That's the status update. We were kind of hoping to get that documentation 2 or 3 weeks earlier. It didn't happen. So we're reviewing those documentation. The meetings are being set up to discuss those with both, our support services from the CMs and some items are related to the engineering. So we'll be having those discussions with our team before we come in and make a recommendation to that. It took a little bit more time than we anticipated to get that documentation from the contractor, but we have it as of this Monday. We got it.
Maybe next month, when we do an update on this project, we can go a little bit more in depth in those issues.
We can get into the details of it. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Who's burning the meter? Who's burning the meter on this time for the documentation? Who's paying for that?
There's, we request the contractor provide detailed information to support their claim. And that took more time than we expected, but we have it now. It's on their end. A full-time impact analysis. Well,
We may end up paying extra because of the time.
I'm reluctant to kind of say what we could end up being. I haven't looked at the data, Director Williams. I think we're at this point ready to kind of make a decision on that, but that is the claim is for us to pay the contractor more on the time that has been delayed. But we're not saying that we agree to that until.
Okay, team, just remember, time is money.
Of course. It's all handling.
Next month, on this particular item, we come back with a little bit more information. We broached that subject last month, and the anticipation was that we would have a better update to that. There's a date of completion. You mentioned last month this in many days, which is everybody felt comfortable in terms of some procurement issues that occurred at the beginning that delayed them, and some time other delays. But beyond that, the construction completion date exceeded the initial contract completion date plus the allowances for the procurement and weather delays by a significant number. So I'd like to see where we are with that. We've paid quite a bit more money also on DM services.
That will provide more detail next committee chairman.
Okay, any other questions?
So thank you.
Right, so then let's move on to the operations report.
Much, Mr. Chairman. The next item that we have for you is item 6C. It's a monthly operations report. For this presentation, we do have Susanna Lee. And I did want to point out, you may have seen, we did place a document at each of your desks. We've also emailed that to you. And it's also been included in the chat here in the meeting so that anybody attending virtually would be able to access this. This is our effort to provide the committee and board, obviously, a complete list of all of the vendor agreements that we have both for our engineering as well as our operations. This does include a couple of corrections that were in your board packet. So this loose document is kind of the latest and the greatest, but I did want to point that out before we begin this presentation. So with that, I'll be happy to hand it over to Susanna.
Good afternoon, members of the committees. in the interest of time, I'll just point out highlights and then I'll direct to a couple of specific slides and if for additional questions, just point them out and we'll be happy to answer those questions. So the memo begins in package page 120. I'm happy to report that the berry productions have increased from the previously 4 to 5 MGD to now 7.5 on an average in May. We actually targeting about 9 MGD currently. So that's on the berry productions. And in May, we also had completed a couple of well-coordinated shutdowns with the 2 satellite plants, one at Torrance. That one was a replacement of a automated control valve that included a 1-day shutdown and well-coordinated with PBF as well as Infomark. There was also a shutdown related to the phase 2 project at JMM. That project also involved Infomark, Veolia, staff, and Marathon. So we completed those shutdowns. Currently and continuously, we are working with PBF to resolve electrical issues that has resulted in multiple and continuously power blip at the plant, which resulted in intermittent interruptions to the operations. So staff, West Basin staff, Veolia staff, and PBF electrical engineers are working on that together with SCE to resolve the issues. Other significant activity is that distribution team been busy working to repair a leak on the 42 line that is in Hawthorne and El Segundo, which Frank will be able to provide a more extensive detailed report on that. Before I hand it over to ops contract, I want to highlight on page 129 on the JMM potable water usage. Over the last few months, since December, we have significantly increased in our potable water usage. There are numerous contribution factors that resulted in our needs to the use of potable water. Majorly, it was impacted by the water quality coming from our main plant that is resulted in a significant increase in iron going to the satellites. That results in MF performance and also all the solids that are coming to the satellites also impacted some of the mechanical equipment, resulting in compressor failures and whatnot. So staff is also working out and following up with Cal Water to resolve a meter error. So the numbers that is listed on page 129, those total usage is resulting to a total to about $2.3 million of potable water usage. Point that out. I'll hand it over to Barca in the interest of time. Talk about ops contract.
Sure.
Then Frank can talk about the 42-inch.
So before I go to the operations contracts update, I'd like to go back to the water quality graph real quick. Chairman, if you don't mind, talk about some of the discussions that we had with the city of LA. General manager and I visited LA Sanitation, visited Hyperion a couple of times this last month. We had very fruitful discussions about what can we do with the inflow water coming in. And the LA Sanitation updated us on a lot of the efforts. If you go to page 123, we've seen the spikes highlighted in the graph. In our conversations with LA Sanitation, they're doing a lot of work over there. And that's not going to stop anytime soon. They have centrifuges with mixers in them. Those mixers were installed a long time ago, and the design of the mixers is such that every time it fails, it's a massive effort, and they have to kind of drain, not centrifuges, sort of digesters. And every time they drain the digesters, it impacts the stream that comes to West Basin. They have 20 digesters, 4 of them are down right now, and they're doing repair on the mixers. And they have a massive project to change the design of the mixers, but that will take multiple years to occur. In addition to that, they are right now, as you can see from the graph over there, Hyperion primary clarifiers rehab. They are doing a massive amount of cleaning of the primary clarifiers. The last time I think they did such cleaning was maybe 10 years ago. And every time, that cleaning effort, it has an impact on the effluent coming out of the plant as well. And in a few months, they're going to start cleaning the primary clarifiers that directly impact us too. So we are anticipating a spike coming in as well. Once they're done with the primary clarifiers, they think that cleaning is going to go throughout the year, all the way up to December. After that, we're going to start with some cleaning efforts on the secondary clarifiers. And we've had some fruitful discussions about how they could balance the effluent water quality, going to the ocean versus coming to West Basin. So just wanted to kind of update the board that those were fruitful conversations. It helps us understand what to anticipate in the next few months, and helps us give direction to O&M contractors about how to respond, protect our membranes when spikes occur, and so on and so forth. Okay, so if we go back to packet page 129, is operational contract update 132. We want to update the committee on some of our efforts in evaluating the operations and maintenance contracts that West Basin has. We have 2 O&M contracts, as you are aware. One for the treatment facilities plus Hyperion pump station, and one for the distribution system. One for the treatment facilities, we have a contract with Veolia. It's a 5-year contract that was entered in 2020, which will expire at the end of next year, December 31st, 2024. A 5-year contract has a value of $75 million. So it's a massive contract, and for us to consider potential rebid of the contract, we want to make sure that we do it right. And so what we want to do here, we want to give an update to the board that in July, we plan on coming to the board with some information, some data. We want to present to the board what are the options, what are some of the pros and cons. By options, meaning extension, renegotiation, or going out to an RFP process. And just touch on some of the pros and cons, so we can see what are the considerations, what are the risks with each one. And also talk about potential schedule if we were to go out for our RFP process, what kind of resources we would maybe want to get on board to help us with an RFP process. So we want to come back with a little bit more detail in July for this very important contract and subject. One of the things that we want to kind of ask you to consider now before we get into July is the term of the contract. What we've done is we've talked to other agencies that went through an RFP process. We've talked to potential bidders. We've talked to folks that, procurement advisors that help with an RFP process, and just to gather up information and do our homework, do our due diligence. And one of the things, when it comes to contract term, this is going to be an essential discussion, I think, moving forward, is whether the district would want to go out to an RFP process for 2 years or 18 months to align that contract with some of the other agreements we have, like the City of LA agreement or some of the agreements with the refineries, or whether we go the typical, most often it's a 5-year contract out there. This is an important discussion to have because a lot of times for us to get actual bidders in an RFP process, what they do is they have a lot of costs at the beginning of the term, and they try to recover the costs after a few years. And so determining whether we go with a 2-year or a 5-year will help us decide on whether an RFP is a better deal than perhaps a renegotiation. That's one thing to consider, us going into July and having that discussion. The other thing that we should consider is the messaging to existing staff, the existing folks that are operating and maintaining the plants. The market for workforce is very competitive out there, as we all know. And so one of the things that we also want to consider is if we were to go out for an RFP process, that we include a requirement for whoever wins the bid, if it was not the incumbent, that the institutional knowledge gained by existing staff would be taken advantage of. And in our discussions with potential bidders and other agencies that went out in RFP, almost unanimous, everybody recommended that kind of requirement be in place for not only to not cause a major impact to the organization through a bid phase, but also to help whoever is coming in get established as quick as possible. So that's another important factor for us to consider as we make this decision moving forward, and wanted to kind of put that out there for consideration. We're currently conducting industry survey of operating contracts. As I mentioned, we spoke to 3 agencies so far. That went out to an RFP. We asked them, okay, what went wrong, what went right, what helped, what didn't help. And we want to bring that type of information also in July. The distribution O&M contract, we did go on RFP a couple of years ago on that one, and that's set to expire in June 30th, 2024. Next year. And so we want to present options for that one as well. That was a 3-year contract. That concludes the update for this month on that. Happy to answer any questions, or we can move to Frank for the operations distribution update.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and wrap us up, and then we can come back and have some questions.
Sure. We can go to the next slide. I'm just going to update on a couple of ongoing repairs in the distribution system. We had a leak on a 12-inch tertiary disinfected line in second water pipeline in Carson. The leak that was on Main Street, just south of Torrance Boulevard. The leak was repaired, so we're just pending the paving work. That work, the repair will take into account 3 days of trenching work as a result of trying to identify the location of the leak. Unfortunately, we're trying to chase that. We also have an ongoing repair in El Segundo. The work started today. This is due, if you go to the next slide, pardon me. This is due to a broken 6-inch valve. The valve was broken in the closed position. Well, the valve wasn't completely closed. It just doesn't allow enough flow for all the customers that are downstream, as shown on the map here. We don't have valves to allow to isolate that specific valve to allow for replacement. without actually having to shut down the entire Title 22 system from the Edward C. Little facility. So the work is going to entail a hot tap of the 42-inch line. So we're going to build a new service to tie into the existing service line at that location. So yeah, we don't have isolation valves up to that point from Edward C. Little. The work is being implemented as a critical repair for procurement code through Infomark, and Infomark solicited bids from a total of 4 contractors. They received 1 bid. The cost proposal from Infomark will be $86,432. That's barring any unforeseen conditions in the work that they may encounter in the next several days. But we anticipate that we will come back to the board for ratification of this work at the next board meeting on June 26th. So that completes my update.
Thanks, Frank. And just,
You said they went out and solicited bids. They only got 1. Who's the bidder?
J.A. Salazar.
You know, Doty Brothers does an awful lot of work for them. Why didn't they get a bid from Doty Brothers?
They solicited bids. They did request bids from Doty Brothers, was T.E. Roberts and XL Paving, and J.E. Salazar is the only contractor that responded.
The job wasn't big enough.
Big enough, but
Yeah, and it was also a critical repair. I mean, even though there's pressure in the line, customers were already letting us know that they could, they were okay with the time being due to the cooler weather, but that they anticipated that they would need a higher flow once the temperature started getting warmer. So we wanted to get this work done as quickly as possible. Once we learned that the valve was broken.
what's the frequency of valve spacing that we have in our system?
It's
not great. When the system was built, we don't have as many valves as we'd like to within the distribution system. My understanding from talking to the folks that were here in 1995, or participated in building the distribution system, removal of the valves was a value engineering decision that was made to stay within budget during the construction of the system. Not everywhere, but a lot of our system, there was a little bit of that going on.
There is an isolation valve within the plan, but however, that valve, we discovered that valve also needs to be repaired as part of the phase 5 project. So it is in our capital project being replaced.
Okay, anything else? All right, do you have any questions?
Time, no, thank you.
Back to, operations. One is on the, influence that we received, from the Hyperion plant. I understand that our contract with the city of LA has no requirements for any level or consistency or anything in terms of what they deliver. Get water that meets the regional water quality control boards requirements that they impose on the plant. The plant operates under a permit. A permit sets standards for their discharge. Does the discharge that West Basin received meet the minimum requirements of the LA County, of the LA Regional Board's permit?
On occasion, does, but most of the time, the answer is no.
So why are we accepting water that doesn't meet that permit requirement? That's what they're supposed to be treating to.
That's what they need to adhere to if they're discharging to the ocean, not sending to West Basin.
Why should we get less, this is an issue. And we've been here for months, and I think I've brought it up in the past, that we need to at some point get some consistency from the city of Los Angeles. Because either that or they can reimburse us for operating the plant, for receiving influent, that water quality is highly variable and makes it very difficult to treat. So shouldn't we get, at least at a minimum, that plant should be treating all of the water to the standard set by the regional board, because that's what they're permitted to discharge at. Why are we offering it so that they can meet the regional board requirements for ocean discharge, but we're gonna get then the downside?
Sherman, I'm with you in your, I understand where you're coming from. The simple answer is that we have an agreement with them. That agreement doesn't have a requirement. And more complex answer is that, you know, if we were to put our LA sanitation hat on and we were operating the plant, we have two options to discharge: to the ocean and one to another agency. We would look at the water going to the other agency because it doesn't have a requirement as a fail-safe. Now, is that fair to what we get? Does that cause us problems? Absolutely.
I don't put my hat on for the other side. Okay, so I don't want you putting on your hat for the other side.
I'm just making the argument that they would make.
It's not an argument that's an acceptable argument. We should be receiving a fairly consistent effluent from them as influent to our plant. That's never happened. Every time I see these graphs, that influent water quality at seasonal is all over the place. And we've been told over and over again, well, we had to shut down this time, we have to buy imported water, our costs go up, our costs go down, and that's every which way. And we've never gone back to the city of Los Angeles and demanded that we need to have a very consistent water supply as an influence for our operation. I think that when we go talk to them, that should be the focus of where we should be going, is that we should be asking for and demanding a fairly consistent effluent from them, an influence to us.
There wasn't a
minimum that they do meet their permit requirements. They're supposed to be treating all of the flow to them. So theoretically, that secondary should all be the same secondary. I understand what you just said, that in order for them to meet the ocean discharge standard of the permit, and since nobody's enforcing the permit on this side of the fence, we're the easy off-ramp for them to meet that. That's not right. Okay? So as we talk to them, we should be doing that. Then I also heard all about all of the work that's going on at Hyperion Treatment Plant. And the indication is that the results of that is going to cause some more impacts on them. So again, that's not an acceptable, that they have to do the work. I don't deny that they have work to do there all the time, but it is not acceptable that we have to bear the brunt of the fact that because they're doing work, the influent water quality for us is going to be even more variable, and we're going to continue to expend money that we otherwise wouldn't have to expend if we had a consistent stream.
The conversation should be between decision maker, not staff to staff. So it's up to us, the board. Hey, wait a minute. Quality that we are getting should be at a minimum. That's the same quality that's being discharged to the ocean. That's what we.
Mr. Chairman, this is something that we can do additional research on as far as the legal requirements and the minimal treatment of that facility, as far as the point of discharge leaving the facility, and of course, the treatment and the delivery to West Basin.
So that with all of this, and I apologize for interrupting you, EJ. because it's already late, is that we have an agreement with the city of Los Angeles. Okay, and that agreement with the city of Los Angeles shouldn't get extended, and at some point, that's gotta be resolved. Right now, we're talking about continuing making investments, et cetera, and in 2 years, theoretically, we will have a dependable source of water. One of the things I'd like to see is that we extend the agreement, but we also get some certainty as to the influent water quality.
Director Deere was here back in the day when.
Signed that agreement?
Yeah.
When was your
That's
first
good.
year?
Stuff.
He was not here. That agreement was signed in like 91.
91?
All right. It's already 6:15, so there's other issues, but I think that we do need to revisit our agreements with the city of Los Angeles, and we've talked a lot about that.
Yes.
Progress there needs to be made. If there's nothing else, I think we can wrap up this meeting, or is there anything else that we need to?
Mr. Chairman, we have no closed session items, which would take us to director comments and future agenda items.
Well, thank you. Just, we should,
Director Deere?
No warning.
None for me. So this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much, members of the committee, and thank you to staff for all the presentations.